Who am I? Why am I here? Where do I go? And what must I do? These are the central questions of Patanjali's 8-limb path of yoga, which has helped to shape and influence the way in which I navigate my life as an educator. Who am I? This is my story, and I want to impress upon you that my narrative is indicative of who I am. However, there are countless stories of other women and their experiences. These are the voices of women of color that are rarely found in our history books, yet my narrative is more dominant of the female accounts being publicized. This is the description of feminism that has often been told and continues to challenge my own thinking of who I am as a woman. I identify as a white, cisgendered, able-bodied female. These are visible, salient identities that I prescribe to. Growing up in a white, middle-class family in Southern California, I was taught from an early age that education was the key to success and how to achieve the American dream. Both of my parents attended minimal college, yet instilled in me that I would attend a university, marry a rich man, and have kids. But I knew there was so much more for me to achieve in my life. The life my parents wished for me is something I internally battle with constantly. I wrestle with the idea of what does it mean to be a woman in our society. I'm in my early 30s, educated, never married, and I don't want to have kids. I battle the female narrative in order to be true to who I am, even when that self conflicts with others' opinions of femininity. Growing up in San Diego, I visually experienced cultural diversity every day through the people I met and became friends with. However, I never realized that with this diversity came systematic racism that disadvantaged many of my friends who come from marginalized families. My mother was morbidly obese and instilled in me to never look like her, while at the same time teaching me to be strong and challenge the patriarchal normative. I was diagnosed with a learning disability in elementary school, in which I was pulled out of classes frequently until I was 14 years old, causing me to be teased relentlessly. While in college, I attended a Hispanic serving institution where I was challenged about my white identity. I'm also a member of a historically white sorority in which I was prescribed numerous female stereotypes. And my first job out of graduate school was in San Diego, where I challenged the university administration to bring a multicultural council under the same advising umbrella to better advocate for resources for the chapters, while at the same time challenging gender and racial norms of the historically white fraternities and sororities on campus. But it wasn't until I moved to Florida that I truly saw a physical manifestation of white systematic oppression. During this time, I began to see my own eyes what my white privilege afforded me. I could freely move through the university as a white person. During this time in my life, I began to understand Peggy McIntosh's metaphor of the invisible knapsack. She states that white people are carefully taught not to recognize their white privilege. And I've come to understand that my whiteness is an invisible backpack of unearned credentials that I benefit from each and every day, while at the same time remaining completely oblivious to it. These unique events within my life can be best summed up through Kimberly Crenshaw's work of intersectionality to help articulate the multiple identities I associate to and categories I'm placed into. Why am I here? My experiences have helped me to better understand who I am, while at the same time challenging me to reimagine the dominant female narrative. Through my work as a doctoral student, scholars have helped me to better understand the complexity of intersectionality within my own life. American society continues to tell me that to live the American dream, I need to be thin, blonde, beautiful, get married, and ultimately have children. Only once I have those things will I be successful. I'm taught to be kind, nurturing, emotional, yet at the same time I need to be competitive, assertive, and dominant to get ahead. Women I interact with tell me that when I find the right man, the desire to be a mother will happen, and my priorities will completely change. Yet I know deep down, I will never have the desire to change my career path or to have children. So where do I go? When many Americans think about yoga, the image of a white, thin, suburban soccer mom, perfectly done up, holding a pumpkin spice latte, wearing Ugg boots, and relying on the universe to solve their problem comes to mind. The image of a white utopia is at the forefront of how yoga is portrayed and helps to suppress consciousness about oppression of others. However, the practice of yoga is deeply rooted in a spiritual foundation that was developed around the 6th or 5th century BCE. Yet white culture has demised this practice to money, narcissism, and a complete oblivion to the world in which we live in. What must I do? I was once the stereotypical white yoga girl, looking for a fitness routine, but I was also seeking a spiritual practice that would help me better understand the world I lived in. As I practiced, studied, and learned from various gurus, I discovered what Patanjali's teaching entailed. I began to dive deeper into a new spiritual practice. The yamas teach us about universal morality to better navigate the world we live in. Niyamas help us to be aware of our personal observances and how we conduct ourselves in the world. Asana is the physical practice of yoga, the one that is most easily identified in mainstream American culture. Pranayama are breathing exercises and brings a mindful approach to our breath. Pratyahara is the control and understanding of our senses. Dharana is a concentration and cultivation to inner perceptual awareness, while dhyana cultivates devotion and focuses on meditation of the divine, and ultimately samadhi, which is the quest for union with the divine. Even with these teachings, white America remains blind to the injustices around us. Perhaps Western yoga is a new version of colorblindness. Eagly and Carly coined an accurate metaphor for obstacles women encounter, which is in a labyrinth, a series of complexities, detours, dead end, and unusual paths that focus on human capital in which discrimination is less blatant for women in their professional careers. Women are still treated unfairly due to prejudice and stereotypical thinking of their role within American society, such as men are better leaders. As a result, I may not be seen as tough enough or having what it takes to perform the job duties others may expect of me. Gloria Steinem captures this notion perfectly when she stated, "We've begun to raise our daughters more like sons, but few have the courage to raise our sons more like daughters." Even with these barriers against women, my white privilege has afforded me a seat at many tables. However, with these seats, there's obstacles that I face due to my gender, where I experience various inequities that impact the leadership roles I'm able to have. A few years ago, I was asked to serve as a representative for the Student Services Department on a committee that was created to develop the plans for a new building on campus. I felt extremely honored to be asked to serve on this committee. I spent countless hours collecting data, holding focus groups, and gathering information in order to advocate for the needs of our students on campus. But after the second meeting on the committee, I quickly realized that my input was unwelcome in a room of 10 influential men. You see, I was the only woman that was a part of the committee. I was given a seat at the table, but was not allowed to challenge or speak up in the group. Early on, and even today, I was taught to raise my hand and speak when called on. And even after the experience I had on this committee, I still need to keep my hand up, because when I lower it, even the leader with the best intentions might not notice. Our desire for leadership is largely a cultural and reinforced trait. Dr. Deborah Grunfeld stated, "Our culture associates men with leadership qualities and women with nurturing qualities, thus putting women in a double bind." We believe not only that women are nurturing, but they should be nurturing above all else. And when a woman does anything that signals she might not be nice first and foremost, it creates a negative impression and makes us all uncomfortable. Yet at the same time, being able to sit at many tables not afforded to other women, I can begin to practice critical race theory, which in summation states that racism exists and is pervasive in society. By understanding how my white identity impacts my gender identity, I can navigate and explore my own intersectionality. Using the marginalized experiences of women and understanding the lens of Black feminism, and acknowledging the privileges of white women in their participation in systemic racism, I can learn how to use my voice to serve others and be an ally. In my role as a student affairs practitioner, I've studied and believe in the development theories of Erickson's stages of development and Chickering's 7 vectors of identity development. Yet these theories are based on people of privilege. We have to critique these theories in order to deeply understand the complex nature of higher education and to challenge chains of oppression. The reality of my life is I've experienced privilege and oppression, and as difficult as it may be to admit it, I've been oppressed, and I have been the oppressor. Greenleaf graciously articulates this within servant leadership as putting your followers first. He said it means using actions and words that clearly demonstrate to followers that their concerns are a priority, and often placing the success of others ahead of the leader. Servant leadership is a lot like teaching yoga. In yoga, to be a great teacher, you have to watch and learn from your students. My students tell me through nonverbal communication and body language what they need. I also have to recognize that these very students teach me how to become a better teacher. By observing my class, being open to their needs, I must change the environment, the pose, my language, or even the energy around me. Similarly, being a servant leader requires me to change my leadership style in order to fit the developmental needs of others. As I look toward my role I play in my current institution, in order to advance the social consciousness mindset, I need to remain authentic to who I am. I'll never be the loudest voice in a meeting or the person marching in a rally. However, instead, I will forever play a strong, supportive role to be the squeaky wheel to challenge systematic oppression of race and gender equity. My whiteness in many spaces allows me to cut through red tape, raise awareness of injustices, reshape policy, and above all else, push against systematic racism and apathy. I know that my privilege as a white person affords me the ability to speak where others may not be able to. And this is why social justice matters to me, and why I challenge gender and racial norms as a leader created by those who have come before me.